lobby. Let's all go to the lobby, lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to Now Slaying, an It Slays podcast production where we break down the latest and greatest in the world of horror. I'm your not-so-humble host, Colton.
I'm Rowan.
And today on the show, we'll be reviewing Ready or Not 2, Here I Come, which was released March 20th, 2026, exclusively in theaters. Now, Rowan, the original Ready or Not is a little bit of an embarrassing omission for us on the It Slays podcast, considering how well it's done in our annual anniversary polls over the years, and the sheer amount of listeners that have reached out asking us to cover it. So without completely spoiling your thoughts on the first movie, just in case we do eventually cover it on the main show, I want to know, were you looking forward to Ready or Not 2, Here I Come?
I had messaged you. I'd never seen the first one. I was like, oh, we got to do the second one. So I made sure.
And it's because you've been holding out, right?
Yeah.
Expecting us to wind up covering it on the main show?
It's literally in the polls every year.
Yeah.
I feel like it never makes it that far, but it's always there. It's one of those like consistent ones that is always there.
I might be misremembering, but I feel like there was 1 or 2 years it made it to kind of like the semifinals, like one of the last 4 to 5 picks.
But I remember, because I own it on Blu-ray, and I remember there was like a big thing about this Blu-ray that it was like super, I don't know why, but it was super expensive even if you were buying it like secondhand. I have no idea why. It was just like this period of time.
Weird. Okay.
I don't know if it was like they didn't make enough or whatnot, but I remember like even used, like it was like $40 to get your hands on.
Shit. Okay.
I managed, I didn't pay that. I think I found it like at a store for like $15, but yeah, so I just know the popularity of it. And then obviously, when Radio Silence did like the screams, it's like, oh, the Ready or Not people. And I was like, I've never seen this, so I don't know what to expect. The only thing I'd ever seen from them is Southbound, the anthology film.
And Abigail.
Abigail. Yes, we did do Abigail, which I feel like we both didn't love.
I'm pulling it up right now as you speak to see where we landed. We both gave it an okay.
Yeah, I remember thinking it was all right. But their anthology movie from when they were first starting out, I remember really liking. I thought that was very fantastic. Solid. So yeah, I did go watch the first one, and it did get me a little excited about this one, to see this one. Obviously, I knew my guy, Adam Brody, wasn't in this. He, sadly had a very explosive ending. So,
yeah, sad to hear.
Sad to hear, but Elijah Wood, all this kind of stuff, this had me excited as a 90s kid. Sarah Michelle Gellar stuff. I was like, oh, okay, all right, we're rocking and rolling. So, yeah, I was like a little bit excited to see it. What about you? You have seen the first one before this weekend, so.
Yeah, I saw the first one with actually a decent group of friends as well, because there were some like lesser known actors that were in prominent, I think, Canadian TV shows at the time. I think Winona Earp or Winona Earp. I don't know how you pronounce it. Yeah, there was an actress or two from that TV show that was in the original Ready or Not, and then some of my friend group was fans of that show. And anyways, so there was a good gaggle of us that went to the first movie, and I think without spoiling exactly where I land on that movie, I think we all enjoyed it. It was a good time. Samara Weaving's one of those actresses that I think she's churning out some pretty consistently good work in the horror sphere, and she's even popped up in other movies as kind of like the horror it girl. Yeah, let's say, in like a Scream 6 for having that person who's killed off in the opening as like being someone who you all recognize. And similarly, so Catherine Newton, she's not as quite as strong as what I would say as Samara Weaving to me, but she's oftentimes used in movies just correctly, where she's a lot of fun to watch. I don't know if she gives me completely like leading girl energy, but I do overall. Like, these two actresses were a couple that I was interested in seeing in a Ready or Not movie. And honestly, I even like the trailers. There's lots of familiar faces, as you mentioned. There's obviously Sarah Michelle Gellar, but there's Elijah Wood, and there's some other people that we'll get into as we further discuss it. That overall, this looked like I don't know if it was going to be as competent as the first one, but it seemed like it was going to be an entertaining ride nonetheless. So seeing these trailers for the past couple of months was getting me more and more excited for the Ready or Not sequel, even if I would say, I don't know if I'm as hot on Radio Silence as everybody else. You mentioned that some of their movies, were for, or not really for you. I'm one of those weird people that I really like Scream 6, and outside of that, I mean, a lot of their work I'm a little bit more mixed on, or I think it's all right. So yeah, I was interested to see exactly where I landed on this one. So are you ready or not for our hot takes? Well, here they come right after the trailer.
What happened?
After the wedding, my husband tells me I have to pull a card. Some kind of initiation ritual. So they hunted me. I won.
Welcome back, Grace. The game has only just begun.
It's much bigger than us.
Back for round 2? Yeah.
Ready or Not 2, Here I Come, rated R.
Ready or Not 2, Here I Come was directed by Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett, the directing duo known as Radio Silence, and written by Guy Busick and R. Christopher Murphy. And the story is as follows. After surviving a deadly game of hide-and-seek, Grace, newly accompanied by her estranged sister Faith, must survive yet another game where 4 powerful families compete for a seat on a throne with the power to change the world, and the winner takes all. Now here on Now Slay, we like to keep things relatively spoiler-free up front before getting into the more in-depth spoiler-filled discussion. So Rowan, what are your spoiler-free thoughts on Ready or Not 2, Here I Come?
Yeah, so I will start off just saying that I do think, unfortunately, I could have stayed with the first one. I wasn't running to this one, Here I Come.
Yeah, not necessarily a sequel that you think was necessary based off the events of the first one.
I thought it was interesting for a sequel, just basically on the fact that, big spoiler, even though we're in the spoiler-free section, spoiler alert for the first one, if you haven't seen it yet, skip ahead 20 seconds, but everybody explodes and dies in it. So I was like, oh, that's kind of weird that they're doing this second one. And I mean, we've been inundated with the trailer, so we know it's, like rich and powerful families and, a council and all this stuff. And I said, okay, you know what? Let them have fun. Obviously, Radio Silence's plans of continuing on with a Scream franchise kind of got derailed, so they got some free time to do stuff. They did Abigail, and so I guess why not visit this that was successful for them at the time. And I don't know, it's just one of those things that I felt like we were just going through the motions, but not as quickly or as steadfully as the first one. I think the first one has so much energy. As a music guy, the first one, bops, just it's all this 80s punk rock music, and obviously the iconography of her and the Chucks and I'm always talking about oh, this is punk rock. The first Ready or Not really has this punk rock feel with the music and the look, and it's fun. It's something different. Where to me, my big thing as a music guy that I noticed in this, I'm just we've gone to a traditional original score. The couple songs they do use in this are it's more pop. It's not really this punk feel anymore. It's just to me, this just feels sanitized and commercialized. That the first one didn't necessarily have that feeling of. Casting wise, like I said, it's kind of cool to see a bunch of people that if you're kind of 90s, 2000s movie watchers, obviously Elijah Wood, who it's him in a horror movie isn't really a surprise anymore, but it's always fantastic to see him. But Sarah Michelle Gellar, I did seeing Sean Hatosy, is it Hatosy or however you say his last name?
Him. Okay.
I mean, obviously I have very fond memories of him from The Faculty, a brethren of Elijah Wood. Although more so than The Faculty, I think of him as an alpha dog.
Okay, you know what? I'm a fan of Alpha Dog as well.
Yes.
I don't remember him in that role, but Alpha Dog, banger.
Fantastic. I don't know if in the spoiler-free section I want to drop the dad yet, if we like want to.
I think he's in the trailer, but sure, let's just leave it for now.
We'll keep
There's
it
a very
just in
prominent, well-known horror director in the movie for a little cameo. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and this, I think this was a lot more focused on kind of giving nods to the horror community than necessarily the first one, but that doesn't always make it a good movie, where it's like I felt the first one was so original and a cool idea, where I just felt like this was so much of like tipping our hat at other things and like having these kind of stunt casting of like, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Yeah. Oh, what? Like we have Catherine Newton dressed inspired by the pilot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And like it was just things like that I was like, all right, like
too cute
and too focused on that kind of stuff. The comedy, I think, is turned up way more in this. And it's not good comedy.
Well, that's kind of what I wanted to ask you. You're still doing your opening thoughts, but my theater, there's only probably about 10 of us in there. It was the very early screening for this, and nobody laughed. No. The entire movie. And this is one of those movies where it's definitely going for a joke probably every 5 minutes or so. And it was pretty painful to sit through this and just have so many jokes just completely miss.
Nothing landed. Nothing landed in my audience, too. There was probably like 10, 20 people in my audience seeing this. I saw this at a 3:00 screening on a Saturday, and it was just silent. And it was kind of like that humor that was almost like, I thought almost cringeworthy of I don't know. It's I don't even know how to describe the humor. Like I'd expect someone like in Aziz Ansari to say lines, it's kind of that schmarmy, but it just, none of the actors really landed it. And I thought it was just very confusing, especially as it goes on later, and kind of what comes to be our big bad, our villain in this is pretty reprehensible, which I thought was an interesting choice, because I was thinking about kind of the villains of the first one are the family, I'm not saying that murdering people for game and sport.
You're saying the husband's a good guy in the first one?
I'm not saying that, but this guy makes those guys look like angels. This guy, to me, they go into some very dark territory or suggestions of dark territory. And I was like, ooh, this it just really didn't fit the tone, I thought, of this series of what it's been presenting me with so far. Shot wise, this is where I feel like I depart from most people. I don't know if you have the same idea. I'm never thrilled about how Radio Silence shoots their stuff. I don't think they have a distinctive enough camera style. It just kind of looks like I'm watching The Conjuring or something. You know what I mean? It's just I'm watching.
It's probably even less so than The Conjuring, to tell you the truth.
You know what?
I know you're not a big fan of The Conjuring, but at least one has
a style. I just it's very just sanitized commercial. We're doing as little as possible with camera work.
It gets the job done, but it's not snazzy. It's certainly not pushing to do any creative camera work. And realistically, in really any of their movies, there was probably a little bit of dazzling with Abigail, in the ballet sequences or whatnot. But honestly, I completely agree with you. It's not something that I really think of them as kind of like a critical piece of their movies that they spend a lot of time crafting engaging camera work.
I thought for the size of this cast, when you're introduced to them, when everyone's on screen, I really thought this was kind of really lackluster in terms of the kills and who dies, and there's so many uneventful or uninspired kills in this. I almost felt bad. I was were these guys held at gunpoint having the right to make this, or it just felt no effort. It was basically we are giving you Samara Weaving in this role again, and we've done our job. That's all we really had to do. We don't have to do anything else to impress you with it. And yeah, I thought this movie isn't long. Like, this movie is not a long movie in modern standards. I think it's like an hour 40 maybe. I thought by halfway through this, it felt like a 2 hour plus long movie. I was just like,
completely agree with you.
Like, this just needs to end. And which is a shame, because when we get in the spoiler section, like, I did like some of the ending. Maybe if they cut 20 minutes out of this, I thought the ending was where this kind of really shined for me. And I thought it got into maybe more of the silliness I'd like to see out of it. But I also thought the silliness of the ending didn't match the tone of the rest of the humor in it. So I was like, even all the humor in it just felt really disjointed. What about you? Like, what are some of your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think one of the core things that you said was going through the motions.
Yeah.
And then you also mentioned later on in your spiel about how it feels like they were forced to make this movie at gunpoint. And to me, it's strange because I'm not as huge of a Radio Silence fan of some people and probably a lot of our listeners, but I seem to remember there being this narrative of them wanting to make this movie for quite a while and wanting to do it for the fans and having this such a great idea to expand on and kind of come back to these characters. And I don't want to yuck anyone's yum, even though that's what I do all the time on this show. I don't like being the contrarian just to be a fucking contrarian. But this has a lot of positive reviews, and obviously based on what we've said, a very fervent fan base. Our listeners love the first one, and I found this to be an absolute chore to sit through. I think a lot of it comes down to giving you two viewpoint characters, and it really just killed the energy of the movie, because you wind up having to kind of spend double the amount of time with each character, kind of bogging things down and then also explaining their backstory. And then this movie pulls a John Wick 2 and very much expands the world in which the first movie existed, and it spends so much time kind of getting bogged down on the rules of this world and even having a character who's there basically just to state the rules. And honestly, I just don't think this movie was very exciting or energetic or fun as the first one whatsoever. With John Wick 2, the first one, it's so silly with, how everyone knows John and, the cops show up and they're like, hey, John, rough night. And everywhere he goes, he's, everyone knows John Wick. And in the second one, they spend all this time kind of getting into the Continental Hotel and this league of hitmen and assassins and how this world functions. And they do it with what I consider with those movies is a very deft hand of introducing you to the world, piquing your interest, but not getting bogged down. And at the end of the day, they know we're here to see John Wick, have some crazy action scenes and kill 100 people. In this movie, it felt like they really loved the lore building of this world, but it wasn't interesting, really, in any capacity to me. And it was a lot of stuff we've seen before, just, wealthy, elite, powerful families, oh, yeah, they're getting one up on the little guy. It's like, yeah, that's a tale as old as time. And a lot of it was just kind of taken from something like a John Wick, but, done 10 years later. A lot of this just, I don't know why they went in this direction, and it feels like to me that they had no idea where to go with this sequel. Outside of one inspired but also very obvious kill once you see the staging of the fight and where they are, there's nothing here to report that's unique or interesting on a gore or splatter front at all. They overuse one very specific gore technique from the first movie so many times instead of creating anything novel to remember any of this cast. And overall, I just kind of feel like this jumped the shark. There was a lot of points in this where it seemed like everyone was in on the joke, winking at the camera, going for jokes and stuff that just didn't really work. And even Samara Weaving and Catherine Newton, which, I usually like them when they're used correctly in these movies, I didn't like either of them here. And Samara Weaving, it's been a minute since I've seen Ready or Not, but I'm sure she was probably doing something very similar to her character in the first movie. But once again, it was just the writing and a lot of the dialogue choices. Everyone spoke in this movie as if their parents just told them as a teenager that they can use certain curse words. It was just, everyone was just cursing all the time. No one spoke like real people. And it's just, once you get into that third act, like what you're saying, where you're kind of building up some certain characters, the main one that they're building up as kind of the big bad, I absolutely hated that character the entire movie. And you wind up spending a good amount of time with that character just to make things work. And yeah, I just didn't think any of it was interesting. So when you have a movie that kind of boils down to you like the two main actresses in the movie, but they're not really giving you what they usually like in the movies. And then basically every single scene construction is them kind of fighting or bickering against one another in the middle of a room, not engaging in like hide and seek or whatever game they're playing, only for someone to burst into the room right before they have that moment, like a breakthrough in their relationship. And then, they die or whatever, the people that break into the room, over and over and over again. I agree. This felt so long. I checked my watch like 45 minutes in and I said, oh my God, I still have another hour of this. Like, what am I going to do? I felt trapped just as much as Grace felt trapped in the first one. Like this was not at all the way I expected this to go when I walked into the theater. I was at least expecting that it would be stupid, but a lot of fun.
Yeah.
At worst was kind of what I was expecting, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it really got there for me, even on that entertainment level, really.
Yeah, no, I mean, all I really have to add to that is I agree with like kind of the lore building, because sure, let's build out the lore and how, this is influenced in the world and families and stuff. But like, I thought even the lore didn't seem very well thought out. It seemed like there were so many.
Absolutely not.
So many moments in this where instead of like going back and fixing your entire movie, they're like, oh, well, the lore isn't going to work for this, so we're just going to spin it like, oh, well, we'll just ignore that, or, oh, I don't know, it's not in the rule books, or... Yeah,
there's so many moments in this where somebody interjects and they're like, well, you can't do that. And they go, well, actually, this clause in this rule book actually says they can do that. Or they will explain something crucial that they left out in the first half of the movie right before it becomes pertinent to the plot.
Yeah.
And once again, it is just like all this sloppy writing, which I don't know. It's like, once again, not the biggest fan of these guys, but I don't think a lot of their work is bad. But usually I don't think I come down on the writing as the issue behind the whole movie. It's just like the whole movie was like, it was all right. It was just disposable. It wasn't bad. In this one, it's like the writing is so, it's just bad and uninspired. And I don't really know if it really made a good argument as to why this sequel needs to exist to me. So would you recommend that people go out and check this one out in theaters?
I mean, I'm going to say no. As someone, like I said, I'm obviously not a seasoned Ready or Not person. I just watched the first one before I had to go see this one. But like the first one I thought was, it was like energetic. It really had like a tone and a mood. And this one, I like you said, we're kind of the opposite, because everyone seems to be telling you.
Everybody likes this. Listen, maybe there's just something in the air. I don't know, but I'm looking at it, like, to me, it's like, I don't know, go spend your money on Undertone, like, go see something, an original horror. Like, I was literally just looking as you were talking at, just like, I was like, what have we done for Now Slain, like, so far in the year? And I'm thinking about, like, what are the bad ones we've done? And, like, I can't believe it, but, like, I'd probably rather spend my money to go see Return to Silent Hill again than go see this, because at least Return to Silent Hill's like trying to do something, even if it doesn't work, where I rather something fail miserably and try rather than see something that just seems like uninspired and just going through the motions, to make money on a recognizable title. And to me, I wouldn't recommend going to see this. Like, I'd be waiting for streaming for this one. What about you? Yeah, I don't know if I'd go so far and say that I'd rather watch Return to Silent Hill over this, or, some of the other bad movies we've covered on the pod recently. But where I'd land is, if you're a huge fan of the first, you've probably seen it already by the time by the time you're listening to this episode. But if not, sure, go see it. But otherwise, wait until it's on streaming. It almost feels like a straight to streaming movie to me. And I think it's just purely because, like, once again, when I was watching it, I just felt like everyone's heart wasn't in this, or that this premise wasn't interesting enough to kind of service the world and the characters they built in the first one. So, I mean, if they're kind of half-assing it, I don't know why you need to go spend your hard-earned cash on rushing it to see this in theaters. You could probably just wait until it's on Netflix or Tubi or wherever later in the year. So it seems like neither of us are recommending you to rush out and see this one in theaters. And with that, I think it's time to cut to our spoiler discussion for Ready or Not 2. Here I come. We are now in our spoiler discussion for Ready or Not 2. Here I come. So if you've not seen Ready or Not 2, it's time to tune out and come back once you've seen the movie, or keep listening if you simply don't care. Rowan, I mean, this is one of those movies where I don't even know if there's a whole lot really to discuss in the spoiler-filled section. It is very much a retreading of the first one, but I did think kind of what was interesting was basically picking up frame for frame right after the ending of the first one. That ending, you only experienced it yesterday or the day before, but I'm sure you've probably seen screen grabs of it over the years. It's kind of one of those iconic horror endings, I would say, of like movies that have been in the last 10 years or so. You know, you have Samara Weaving in the bridal gown covered in blood, Chuck's on smoking a cigarette with a whole like mansion burning behind her. It's a badass final frame of this movie, and I thought it was a neat choice to pick it up immediately right from that moment and do some unique camera work on getting on the gurney, all this sort of stuff, to kind of set things off where, you know, for 10 seconds or so, I was like, all right, here we go. And right away, I was thinking like John Wick 2. And I was like, oh, I hope the ambulance drivers are in on it for some reason. You know, they pick her up and they bring her right to this new, much more fucked up game. You know, they're not playing hide and seek this time. They're playing something else. I was hoping that we were going to get like this influx of energy and reinvention into what the sequel was going to be. And then it's like, oh no, we're just going to go to the hospital with her and we're going to get this slow opening of a lot of movies we've seen. This is like the Halloween 2 beginning of this movie, you know, where I was let down basically right away.
Which is a shame because, when you're in the hospital and we kind of get the first explosion with Kevin Durant, which is a shame because I like him as he's like fun. Him as an actor.
Yeah, exactly.
And I feel like the character he's playing, this like coked out guy that, you know, I was like, man, I kind of wish they had kept him for longer in the movie because I was like, I feel like because I like him as an actor and I think he can play crazy really good, I was like, oh, we should like keep this guy so at least we can have like some fun because I just found like all the villains are either like super comical or like super deep and dark, which like neither fits the tone of these movies.
Yeah, this movie should be basically controlled chaos.
Yeah.
A lot of energy. It should be people like stalking her around, you know, rampaging around. A lot more like this Kevin Durant character is in the beginning of this movie. And it's a shame that they use him basically just to set up what is it called? The combustion.
Yeah, the combustion.
The spontaneous combustion aspect of this, and about how it's tied to these rules that are still ongoing, even if, you know, our characters might not know that after the events of the first movie, they basically invoked a second set of rules in a game that's being played.
There's a whole council of people.
Exactly. And basically him being used to show that there's still some forces at work here, I just thought was incredibly dull. And the fact that they use this like spontaneous combustion gag throughout the movie over and over and over again, so much so that it's hard to even think of any sorts of other unique kills in this movie outside of just spontaneous combustion, is a huge missed opportunity for this sort of thing. In a sequel, what you usually do is you like ratchet up the kills, you make things crazier. Sure, most of the times they jump the shark, but it's interesting to see a sequel that's like this first one, or based off of a movie like this first one, where all of a sudden it's just like, well, let's make everything safe and boring. It's just baffling, you know?
Well, that's the thing. And you're basically within like 20 minutes of this movie, you're pretty much, as an audience, set up to understand, like, okay, so all I'm really doing in this movie is waiting for members of all these different families to break rules that they don't know so they'll explode. Where the first one, a majority of the kills are like innocent. I don't know how innocent they are, but it's like the staff that works for the rich family. And it's like,
yeah,
because they're just rich, ditzy idiots. Like they get scared and they shoot their butler in the head or whatever, right? Like there's more kills like that where it's not, like you said, it's not just, all right, everyone's going to explode at some time. So let them just fight and figure it out. Now, I mean, they did like, there was some stuff that I thought, was like, okay, this is kind of funny. Like I did like it, when Grace is like fighting Alex's like ex-fiance and they mace each other in the eyes, and then they're just like, you know, they're just punching at air and there's like music playing.
Yeah, is it like Total Eclipse of the Heart or something like that? Something like that. I don't know if that's
it's like a very wedding song, which I thought was funny, except this scene goes on like 5 minutes too long, where I was just like, okay, we got the joke. Like, they've been punching at the air now for 4 minutes. Like, is something going to happen other than them just missing each other and sometimes bumping into each other and not being able to see? And it was just stuff like that where I was like, the gags just went on for so long.
Well, for me, the only other kill that was inspired in this movie was the washing machine kill earlier in it, which, of course, that was the one I was alluding to in the spoiler-free section. Is just they're fighting in a big laundry processing area that it's very obvious he's going to go in the washer or the dryer or something. That's the only interesting and unique thing you can do in a setting like this, right? That I thought like that was a little bit fun, but like it's a shame that you think of one or two things in this entire movie that's kind of interesting, right? In a movie that everyone is loaded up with weird weaponry in the beginning, indicative of the time in which their family joined this weird satanic order. And they have like RPGs and scimitars and crossbows and all this stuff. There's so much fun you could have had with all this weaponry, or even like swapping out the time period appropriate weaponry with the families, that it could have added a nice flavor to it. But honestly, it's just everyone essentially just explodes at some point. And everyone finds this exploding gag incredibly gross and incredibly funny at all times in the movie that, you know, I was tired with it in the first one. So I was kind of hoping that this was something that once again was going to be kept to the very end of the movie and you can kind of just ignore it. But no, I mean, it's in our face the entire way through this time.
Yeah, and I mean, there was just stuff like, I thought they rode way too hard with, like, the Madhu character, who, like I said...
Is that the one who's basically, like, a little bitch?
Yeah.
Like, doesn't want to... Yeah. I thought his performance was fine, but, his entire character is just, like, he's a complete...
Well, I was like, I've never seen people that love Parks and Rec so much and just were like, we're literally going to write Aziz Ansari's character into... this film. But it was stuff like that I was like, this is an uninteresting take, because obviously, you know, he's a little bitch, so he's like, no, I'm giving up my power to my wife, and then the wife just takes off. But then I'm like, all right, well, this is kind of stupid. Like, no one explodes because of that, because they decided they want to keep him around for comedic purposes.
Yeah, I didn't understand that either. I thought they made it clear that they couldn't just like choose not to play or leave, but I guess she can. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and then they try to make the, you know, Elijah Wood's character, the lawyer, you know, does the like, oh, well, guess what? Now she's in charge of all your money and you've lost everything. And
I'm thinking like, okay, until when? Tomorrow morning when you all fail? Like, okay, sure. Yeah, you have the family inheritance and wealth for 6 hours. It's like, okay, cool. Another aspect of this movie, I kept kind of alluding to it in the opening or the spoiler-free section, is just this nature of these estranged sisters and how much Samara Weaving's character, I think, didn't really have much to say about her family in the first one, or certainly that she has an estranged sister, which is fine, whatever. But this is like a core theme and character motivation for both of these characters for the entire movie, where every single scene they're in, they have to be talking about this traumatic experience of when Grace left Faith to go across town or go across the United States to go to school, which is a very normal thing for everyone to do, by the way, when you reach that age, but whatever. And it's just every single scene, it's basically they're both at each other's throats and also trying to work towards this reconciliation where, dude, I feel like they had the same conversation 6 to 7 times in this movie throughout its runtime. I was just like, is this Groundhog's Day? Like, what are we watching here? I was so bored by this conversation of just clearly they have to be stuck in the same rut, stuck in the mud, spinning their wheels until the end of the movie, of course, where obviously they will reconcile. It was just so tired, so boring.
See, to me, it was just like, I guess I was a little bit interested. Like, obviously they get handcuffed together, and I was like, okay. So I was like, the entire movie, they're going to have to like fight these guys handcuffed.
And that would have been cool if they worked it into the fight choreography or something where they can
Yes.
clothesline people. And yeah, I can see.
I was like, they got to do this. But this movie is like, we need to get rid of this so quickly because we don't want to go in that direction. And we just want to go in more like, I guess, normal kill fight direction. And like, to me, it was just things like that. Like I was begging for anything to make this interesting. And, you know, I alluded, like, I thought Titus's character was like a little weird.
Yeah, he's the one that you keep hinting at as too
He was like,
dark,
he was
right?
kind of the big bad. Now, I feel like you knew it was going to be him from the get-go because they make him out to be like, you know, they make it out that Ursula is you know, in charge.
Yeah, Sarah
and I'm
Michelle Gellar's character.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, like, you can just tell the way they're talking about him. You're like, at some point, this guy's gonna snap and stuff. Yeah, I just thought it was almost, like, extra mean because they keep hinting, like, basically once he gets unloose, like, he loves beating the shit out of women. There's, like, definitely some, like, hints of, like, you know, like, he's gonna, like, fucking rape these girls and stuff like that. And I was just like, I thought about the meanness of the tone of the first one, and I'm like, it never goes into like stuff like this that's almost like uncomfortable, which would be fine if this movie was like ultra serious and dark. But I just thought it was a weird tone where they were trying to make this even funnier than the first one.
You know what's crazy about this is that I didn't even read, because Sarah Michelle Gellar's character is the one who has to deliver a lot of this and kind of explain it to Grace. And like, you're literally marrying such a monster, which we'll put a pin in that and get back to it, that I didn't even read this as like her being honest or earnest. I was like, oh, okay, she's like trying to manipulate this situation. She's concocting a ploy. She wants to, you know, seed some hatred already here to kind of seize power for herself. And it's like, oh no, she's just being completely honest and she's going to get her neck snapped here in a minute. And I was just so disappointed and underwhelmed, and not in the way of like subverting expectations of having Sarah Michelle Gellar in your movie and just like snapping her neck and her just going out like unceremoniously. Just like, once again, this was all structured and built up so incorrectly that I couldn't even read her final scene in the movie as sincere. I just thought it was complete like weird manipulation, power tactics, all this nonsense, that I was just so disappointed by it. And I absolutely hated the character of Titus throughout this whole movie. I know you mentioned it was like nice seeing him because you know him from the faculty and whatnot, but like I just hated that character. Yeah. I thought he was such a wet blanket of a character, especially compared to Buffy. And the fact that they're both David Cronenberg's children, disappointment. Should have had David Cronenberg in the movie. Going around in a wheelchair with a shotgun or something would have been more fun.
I did love seeing David. I mean, definitely, I was like, that got me excited at the beginning, especially, you know, him
I agree.
in his
I was hoping he was gonna
overseeing like the war. I was like, oh, this is a little, because at first I was like, oh shit, are they gonna make like some little statements going on here, like, you know? And then he's like calling off the war, like the ceasefire.
Yeah, it's cool. It's showing that how much power these families have, and it's similar in a. Once again, I just keep going back to John Wick, so I'm sorry, audiences, if you've never seen John Wick. But they do all this sort of shit in John Wick, where they live in a very much like a heightened reality, where the movie you're watching can't exist in this reality, and it's not so dissimilar from our world, but basically it functions by a completely different set of rules, and it usually makes it a little bit interesting if you can completely nail it. So I liked kind of hinting at that sort of stuff in the beginning, but this movie completely abandons it the more it goes on. Yeah, I want to talk about the marriage stuff, because... We introduce it by this mom kind of coming in. She's a Japanese woman with a samurai sword, and she has this son who's clearly on the spectrum. He's just playing Switch all the time, asking about the Wi-Fi password. And she kind of comes in and she's like, I have a secret. I have a way that you can break the rules without having to kill anybody. You can get out of this. You just have to marry one of the people hunting you, and it then prompts another wedding instead of the game and all this stuff, and the person who's getting wed gets the seat of power. And I'm just like, what are you going on with, woman? Like, right in the middle of this. And as soon as like the words left her mouth, I said, okay, they're going to use this as a comedic way to kind of kill her and the child, but this is going to wind up being important in the third act.
on, yeah.
And I sat there the whole movie waiting for when is this going to rear its ugly head, because it's such a stupid, contrived plot point to get out of this set of rules that they didn't even have to set up this way. And, of course, they have the shocking and disgusting revelation of imagine having to marry Samara Weaving. Imagine all the women in this world that you have to marry Samara Weaving. Yuck. How disgusting.
Gross.
Yeah. I just... It was just so stupid. Like when this plot point came up with it's like they're stuck in between this thick sheet of glass, and her sister's on the other side with a shotgun aimed at her, and she's on the other side and can't escape. And oh my god, it's just like the way they put them in this scenario where the only way out was for Samara Weaving to ask Titus for his hand in marriage. I just hated the way all this was done. It was awful.
I didn't love it either. Now, like I said, I was a little kinder to the third act when we get into the wedding.
I agree.
And stuff.
Once she dons the black wedding dress and all this stuff, there's a couple of little unique kind of stylistic things in there I didn't mind, but the way you get there is tough.
Yes, it's tough. And this is really the problem throughout this whole movie, is that third act that I did enjoy in Elijah Wood, the lawyer, are in totally different movies. Like that scene and Elijah Wood, I think, are in a very campy movie.
Yes. And Elijah Wood knows 100% what he's doing as well.
Fantastic. Like, and that was kind of my issue, is I was far more interested in this lawyer than I was anyone else. I was like, to me, he's like kind of the weird, like he's not trying to be funny, but he's kind of funny just because he's so weird, like just playing the straight man in it. And I was like, yeah, I'm enjoying my time with him and just kind of his... You know, he's the lawyer, like he doesn't give a shit about any of these people. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. You know, he's losing, you know, he's Satan's lawyer essentially. And
yeah, it's basically you make a deal with the devil and he's going to tell you all the points of the deal.
Yeah,
That's basically
exactly
what his character is.
But that was my issue, is I was just like, so much of it. And it's not that, like, I do feel like that all the other actors were trying to be campy, but it just wasn't successful. I will give a salute. I mean, you got to give a salute to your boy, Nestor Carbonell, the mayor from the Dark Knight series, Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight series. It took me forever to be like, where do I know this guy from? And then I was like, oh shit, it's the mayor from like the Dark Knight and stuff.
Listen, I love Nolan, love the Dark Knight. I can't picture him in my head. Who you're
he plays the mayor in all those movies.
Okay, all right.
So I was trying to figure out. I was like, why can I not place him? But yeah, I mean, honestly, most of my love notes on this are you know, once we get Samara Weaving in like the black bride gown, and we're having the satanic wedding.
Yeah, just to step back just a moment before that, just once again going back to Sarah Michelle Gellar's death, because that moment isn't just like a quick beat to get her out of the picture. It also sets up another rule, which is going to be very important in 5 minutes time. Of course, family members can kill family members without recompense, and it's completely fine for the rules of this game. Which, of course, makes a lot of sense when our lead character is just about to wed somebody and become part of the family, and that person she's being wed to is an irreprehensible, complete, terrible character who's completely villainous and unhinged. And I just sat there and I was like, okay, we all know she's going to kill him and throw him into the pit. Let's get through this. So anyways, this final sequence, the Satanist wedding. Yeah, lots of like neat set dressing, lots of good costuming. I think it's all like over the top and tongue in cheek and all that's intentional, of course, you know, as is like Satan appearing in a glimpse of fire or smoke or whatever there near the end of it. And they're like, oh, did you see that? It was fun. Completely like tonally incongruous to the rest of the movie that I felt like I was watching. That movie would have been fun, but we didn't get that movie.
No, I think the scene of her, like, when she does her deed, which, like you said, you know is coming. It's like, okay, she's gonna murder Titus and all that. But, you know, I was getting a good chuckle when she threw the ring in the pit, and then you're just, like, seeing everybody from the, you know, the servants to everyone trying to gain power. So everyone's jumping in the pit, like, some people are like jumping like they're off the top rope in WWE, and it's just like, and I was like, this is fun. Like, to me, I was like, this is fun. But yeah, I was like, this whole aesthetic and funniness of it, I was like, this doesn't match anything I just saw. So it just tonally doesn't fit the movie whatsoever. And especially like once we go into the pit and then we're getting all these like slow-mo, like I'm watching some like period epic battle movie of like people trying to fight over this ring.
It was filmed so poorly, especially for how much fun that sequence should have been. I hated that it was all just filmed essentially against a black backdrop without being able to discern any of the chaos that was supposed to be, unfolding there.
Yeah, and that was kind of my issue with it too. I was like, I wish this had been shot a little better, because I think you could have had a lot of fun in this pit and all these different characters in the pit. Like, because, obviously I'm waiting. I'm like, so who's punching this little kid in the face that's trying to get it? Course. And it's just like, it's stuff like, you get to see him get punched in the face, but I was just like, I felt like you could do so much more than just have fun in this.
And of course, it all just ends with them all dying in an eruption of blood anyways, where they all spontaneously combust and, okay, great. It all didn't matter at all. It's just and basically they walk off with the goat and the movie ends shortly thereafter. But even disappointingly, they don't pick a good frame or like a powerful frame or a fun frame to end this movie on. You have these two sisters reconciled. They're kind of lighting up cigarettes, sunglasses on. You got a goat, and they just end it in like a super wide shot. They're just walking in the deep background along with their goat. Just like boring, uninspired shot. They could have definitely did some like cool angle shot. You put the goat in the foreground and both of them are kind of in the midground, like looking really cool. You could have done something just like both of them like close on their faces sort of thing. There's a bunch of different ways you could have shot this and made it a cool kind of throwback final shot to the previous film. And yeah, they just didn't do it.
Yeah.
Just once again, like the lowest hanging fruit. Could have spent 10 minutes out there figuring out what would have been a cool camera angle to capture something at least somewhat similar. And yeah, they just didn't. Last little thing I wanted to mention before we get into reviewing this is the weird video you get when you log it on Letterboxd. And this is the first time I've seen this. I don't know if Letterboxd is going to be rolling this out more often, but when you log this, you get a video from Sean Hatosy, basically Titus, the character I hated in this movie. And he's thanking you for coming to see the movie and talking about how this movie was for the fans and everyone, all this sort of thing. Hope you enjoy it. It's very bloody and a lot of fun. And as someone who left the theater thinking that it wasn't very fun, and I really didn't like his character, I don't know if it improved my sentiment and feeling towards the movie when I saw that video. Very, very strange little choice.
They should do different videos depending on the stars you give it on Letterboxd.
Oh, that I would have been fine with, You give it like a fat 2-star, 1-star, and Samara Weaving just tells you to go fuck yourself.
Yeah,
I would all right, never mind. I'll hear for that,
Yeah, all for the degradation from Samara Weaving. The only last note I wanted to bring up that I absolutely hated, which wasn't a video when you logged it in, was, of course, to me, I just didn't like the final ending because, of course, what do we kind of do? We got to make everything very ambiguous in case we want to come back for thirds, where they kind of hint at that maybe they could go after other families. They also leave it where the lawyer basically explains she can get out of the system, but it doesn't break the system. So it's like they'll just find other families and it'll continue on, and I'm just like, dear Lord, like we're getting a third one.
I had blocked those details and now I'm upset again.
I'm sorry to upset you.
So if you're new to the podcast, our review rubric is nay, okay, yay, or slay. So Rowan, what would you give Ready or Not 2, Here I Come?
Yeah, so I really didn't enjoy this compared to the first one, but I will say, like, I don't think it's like nay territory. I don't think it's like so egregiously bad. I mean, I think we can both agree. I mean, you got to see an hour and 40 minutes of Samara Weaving. That's a plus for most people. So you know, that's good. And, you know, like I said, it was cool to see some like 90s icons back on the screen. I like the little Cronenberg cameo. I thought the washer kill was fine. And the ending, like I said, I liked the ending better than I liked anything else. And I thought the ending was really cool. I got a chuckle out of it. I feel like there was enough in this for me to give it an okay, like a pretty light okay, but you know, I don't want to throw myself necessarily in a pit. After I've seen this, maybe I'd rather just explode quickly or something. So I feel like I'm going to land on an okay. What about you?
Yeah, it's funny because I don't know if either of us really said any good things about this movie really whatsoever as we discussed about it. I think I literally called it bad multiple times. But also, I don't feel like it's bad enough to warrant a nay either. It's this is one of those ones that I left and I was like, yep, that was completely mediocre, boring, uninspired, not really anything to redeem the movie, but also nothing really bad enough to sink it into like the Return to Silent Hill territory or Scream 7 or whatever else we've made recently. So I'm going to land on like the weakest of okays as well. But this was a big disappointment, and when I'm coming in and just being like, oh, okay, the worst case scenario is going to be fun, and I didn't find it basically remotely fun, that's tough. That's especially when the first one, it was just like so effortlessly fun is what it felt like to me, and entertaining. So yeah, big disappointment here for Ready or Not 2. Here I come, and I'm going to land on an okay, the weakest of okays for this one. And if you're not following us on our socials already, you could do so at It Slays Podcast. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Slasher, Letterboxd, Threads, Bluesky, TikTok. If there's a social media, we're probably there at It Slays Podcast. And if you want to help support the show financially, like our horror hounds, Holly, Nicholas, Mark, Steven, Dan, Brian, Trevor, OG James, and Philip, gain access to the Patreon exclusive show Stream Screams hosted by Jill, and get episodes of the main show 48 hours early or whenever Rowan decides to edit them. Be sure to head on over to patreon.com/itslayspodcast and choose whatever tier works best for you. Rowan, we didn't really mention the music in this movie in any sort of favorable way.
Yeah,
certainly
I know.
not like a notable way. But, you know, let the people know where they can find the playlist anyways.
Yeah, so you can go to Spotify and look up the It Slays Podcast horrific playlist. If you have any problems finding it, you can go to the social media that Colton just mentioned, go into the bio, click the Linktree link, and there's a button that'll take you directly there. We upload scores and licensed music from iconic horror movies we review, or just horror movies we love. We update it regularly, so follow it, get your spooky music on, because why the hell not?
And next time on the show, Rowan and I are currently beefing on whether They Will Kill You counts as a horror movie.
Let's just do it. Let's just do it.
Let's just do it? Okay, I was going to say, if we still strongly disagree, we can turn it over to the audience, see if what they think, if we should cover it or not. But we'll be back soon, I guess, with They Will Kill You. We'll check that one out. And with that, I think that about wraps things up for this episode. So until next time, I'm Colton.
I'm Rowan.
And as long as you keep listening, we'll keep slaying.